Hello everybody and welcome back. We will continue now taking apart a data card for Warlord, and we'll start off talking about the DT, or the damage track of the model first, because everything else kind of depends on that. You can see that Zeldorian's damage track, where the DT line is, goes 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what you're going to do is look down the column depending on how many wounds he's taken. So if he's taken 0 wounds, he's fresh right in the game, you'll look down the column where the 0 is on the damage track. And if he's taken, let's say, 3 wounds, you're going to look down the column where the 3 is. Now, after 4 wounds, you're going to look down the 4 column, and beyond that, any wounds he takes, he's going to be dead and out of the game. Okay, now we're still in the first block of stats here up towards the top where the damage track is, and MOV stands for movement. The number there is how many inches a model can move using a standard movement action, and we'll get into actions a little later on. This could be altered for terrain or things like that, but as you see also, as Zeldorian gets hurt, his movement goes down a little bit. DIS is for discipline. This is going to be the courage or mental strength of the model, and he may have to take tests because of spell effects or things like that. DV is the defense value of the model. This is how hard it is to hurt and hit the model when you're fighting it in regular combat. And MD is the magical defense, and as you'd expect, this is how hard it is to affect the model by magical means. Under the MD, you can also see it says SA, that stands for special abilities, and there's a couple terms after that. He is fearsome, he can hover, he has regeneration, and a spy ability. I'll quickly give you a heads up about what some of those mean. Fearsome means that enemy models that want to charge him have to make a discipline check. Hover means he can move over terrain without being hindered by it. Regeneration gives him a chance to regenerate wounds that he takes. So this is where you're going to see some of the special abilities of each model that you have in your army, if they have any. The last two sections of the data card have to do with his combat stats. The first one is his melee attack value, and you can see that goes down as he gets hurt. And then you have a number of MA, so this is the number of melee attacks he can make when he's fighting somebody. So Zeldorian can have 2 attacks, that means he's going to roll 2d10 when he's attacking somebody. The MAV is what he adds to each one of the rolls to see if they hit. So he would roll 2d10, and let's say he's uninjured, he would add 7 to each of them. And if he meets or exceeds the DV of the target he's trying to hit, he's hit it. Now, of course, there are different combat modifiers, and we'll get into those as we delve deeper into the game. And this is also where you're going to see special abilities that are linked to his melee attack. Now, for Zeldorian, he has an ability called Smite, and in parentheses it says Good. Now, what that means is anytime he's fighting somebody who's good, he gets +1 to his MAV. So he would normally roll 2d10 because he has 2 attacks, +7 for the result. But if he's fighting somebody good, it's 2d10 +7 +1 because of the Smite ability. And then lastly, you see the RAV section. This is for his ranged attacks. You can see that his RAV goes down a little bit as he gets hurt. It's a little bit lower than his MAV. He also starts off with 4 ranged attacks, the number of RA, as opposed to 2 melee attacks. So even though it's a little bit weaker, he has more of them, so he's probably a little bit better at range. And next to the 4 number of RAs, you can see it's range 12. That's how far his ranged attack is. And there's some special abilities which we'll look at in just a second. Now, even though being a beholder type model, he probably has eye beams or something that come out of the little eye stalks, they're not considered spells or spell effects. They're just normal ranged attacks. You have a number of ranged attacks, he has a range, and the RAV is for how powerful those attacks are. And taking a quick look at the special abilities for his ranged attacks, you can see that he's a sharpshooter, he is unhindered, and he is also a war shooter. Now quickly what those mean are sharpshooter allows him to disregard some of the effects of other people's special abilities that might protect them from some ranged attacks. He blows right through those. Unhindered means that while he's in hand-to-hand with somebody or in base-to-base contact fighting them in melee combat, he's still allowed to use his ranged attacks against other, more distant opponents. And War Shooter means that he can shoot and fight in the same turn. Normally you can only do one of those two actions, but he can do both of them. So he's a pretty formidable model, and he will definitely be forming the backbone of my Darkspawn army. We'll take a look now at some other new Reaper releases. All of these next ones come from the Warlord line, and we'll start off with, as you can see, a Wood Elf Sergeant. This is a single piece miniature, so there's no assembly required. Cleaning was limited to a few mold lines that were mostly along the edge of the cape and along his left arm. There were a few tiny bits of extra metal from the casting process, but it was almost negligible. Could hardly see them. Now, under the cowl, you can see really good facial features and long stringy hair that's coming out from under it. He's equipped with a longbow, a longsword, he has a dagger on his belt, and a quiver of arrows on his back. Really nicely detailed model here. Work excellently as an elf. You could probably also pass him off as a human just because you don't see any pointy ears or anything, but a very good player character model here. I really like this next model a lot. It's a Black Orc Warlord, and he will definitely be making an appearance in my Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay game as an enemy model to menace the party of player characters. It's a 4-piece model, but you only end up using 3 of them in the actual assembly. The extra piece is a second head, and we'll look at that in a second. Now, the bulk of the miniature is the body, the legs, and his right arm that's carrying that massive axe. The left arm carries a spiked shield. That goes on as a separate piece right under his shoulder pad on his left side. The shield is decorated with severed hands, and there's a bone on there and what look like bits of scalp. Obviously trophies that he's taken from his victims. The last thing for you to do with the model is decide which of the 2 heads you're going to use. I'm going to stick with the bear orc head here that you can see in the picture. He's got a mouthful of ugly teeth that are coming out, and it's a very good expressive face and head. Your other option is a fully enclosed plate helm, and it has 3 spiky horns coming off of it. I'm going to go ahead and use that on a Chaos Warrior instead of on this guy. Just swap it out to have a little bit of uniqueness on another model. Now, I can also see this guy being used in a Warhammer Fantasy Battle Army. He fits on a 1-inch or 25mm square base, like in Warhammer, and a good friend of mine, Michael, has a large Orc and Goblin army. I could see this guy showing up there very easily. The last figure we're going to look at for this set of reviews is a Bathalion Centurion. Now, this is a new model for the Darkspawn army, but just from the look of it, you can see how it could fit into a 40k Tyranid army. It could fit into some Underdark adventures in D&D, if you're going to fight the Dark Elves and Mind Flayers and things like this. A model that looks like this would certainly fit into either one of those 2 other applications. The figure comes in 4 pieces, and you also get a 40mm square base with it. The first piece, the largest of the 4, is the body section, and that's the segmented part of the body and tail. It also has the shoulder section and 2 of the 4 tentacles that are coming out of his face. The second piece is the sort of flat head section, and there's 2 more tentacles that come out there. Now, this slides easily into place on the shoulders. You can move the tentacles around if you want a little bit. Just be careful so you don't snap them off. The other 2 pieces are his arms, or scythe-bladed weapons, and these 2 pieces needed the most cleaning out of any part of the model. There were visible mold lines along the perimeter of both of them, but they weren't thick at all. They did clean up pretty quickly, but they were noticeable more than anything else on the model. The 2 arms slid right into place around where his shoulders would be, or where you'd expect them to be. I don't know if a large monster like this really has shoulders like we think about them, but they fit right into place, and he was a snap to put together, and it just needed a little more cleaning than some of the other models. Alright, before signing off for this episode, I wanted to give you a quick heads up about Reaper's 2 lines of paints that they produce. And if you go to ReaperMini.com/paints, you'll be able to see more information about them. I've used paints from the Master Series and the Pro Paints line, been very happy with them, and haven't had any problems at all. Thanks for watching this episode of ReaperMinisTV, and I'll see you soon.